exactly as what we saw later as being what was on it. So obviously there were sources there, and there were people that had seen it, and like I said, unless it's law enforcement sources, and the law enforcement people that have been talked to have said it's laughable to suggest that law enforcement prevented the NFL from viewing that.
Let me tell you, Dan.
People that are in the know say that's just a risible claim, that it's just not believable. Again, there's no evidence so far that Goodell, saw it and or had an opportunity to see it and refused to see it. But you're right that is probably enough to cost him his job if it can be shown that he was willfully blind, that he put the blinders on and said, no, I don't want to see it. And boy, it's a shocker, isn't it, that Ray Rice may have not been totally forthcoming when he was interviewed by the league office. I mean, come on. And now Goodell is saying that there were inconsistencies with what Ray Rice told us and what we then later saw.
Yeah.
Well, no kidding. That comment might be enough to make him be ruled incompetent to serve as commissioner.
Right.
The other stuff that you see is all the flag waving already for Condi Rice to be in the job. I mean, people are already talking about how great it would be if Condi Rice succeeded him and
it'd be great for the Browns.
Lived out her lifelong dream of being NFL commissioner. So that I'm sure doesn't help with his job security.
It'd be great for the Browns because she's the biggest Browns fan there is, man. So maybe
that's right. Condi loves the Browns, so we got
maybe
that
having somebody up at the top would be good for us there. But talking about how it's hard to believe, and John and I talked about it the other day about how everybody knows that maybe some people don't, but we know that the NFL security, it's not just ex-police officers. We're talking high level, former Secret Service and CIA and FBI. Let me I'm trying to think. The Fix Is In by Brian Toohey. We had him on the show a couple of times. He wrote a series of books about how sports can be rigged and how he thinks it has been. It's not on the up and up, and he goes through every different sport and blah, blah, blah. Point being, there's chapters about the NFL that talk about digging through the files of the NFL, things that the public has never seen, and they've got these thick, giant book-like folders on instances and investigations that the public never found out about tips that games were being rigged and that points were being shaved and how this person investigated and this former CIA guy had this connection. And these are things that if you read it, you go, in today's day, you wonder, how are these things not TMZ news? How is all of this stuff not out there? And but my point is they've got all of these giant secret top level investigations that they've done into their own sport. And you're going to sell the fact that you spent 30 seconds talking to Ray Rice and say, hey, did anybody else see what happened? Are you sure? All right, here's what we're going to do. Because that's what it looks like at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's all about an image. And by the way, when TMZ broke the video on Monday, they promised that on Tuesday they would be breaking the proof that Goodell knew and covered up.
They said no.
I didn't visit TMZ yesterday, I'll admit, to find out that scoop, and haven't since that time. Was there anything of substance yesterday in that regard?
Oh, no, they admitted. They said that they dug through and talked to their sources, and as far as they can tell, we read this on yesterday's show, the latest with the TMZ report was as far as they could tell, he did not have knowledge or had seen this video ahead of time. That was what they concluded. So, because I went too, and how amazing at the end of this that we're talking about going to TMZ for stuff. That we're the people who live in dumpsters and record people coming out of restaurants and all of this stuff. And this has become the breaking point in 2014 for all of today's big news stories, especially the sports ones. Right,
yeah, the go-to source for NFL credibility.
Did you check TMZ?
Stories. Goodell, if he didn't have access to the video, maybe he should have called Chris Mortensen, because Mortensen had obviously talked with multiple people who had seen it and could describe it in great detail. So, maybe they should have gone the other way, and the NFL office should have asked the media some questions instead of the other way around.
You know, I mean, I'm pretty technologically savvy. I don't know. I think you are too, Dan. All I'm going to say is I have been able to view some videos that are impossible to find on the internet, where I literally had to work really hard to find these things because they've been pulled from the internet. And I'm talking even, I'll be the first to admit, and I had no interest in looking at the second one, but I went and tracked down a copy of the video from ISIS from last month with James Foley, because I couldn't. It was one of those, I don't know if I can believe it until I see it with my own eyes, and it took me days to find it, but I found it, and I regretted that I saw it afterwards. I said, man, next time I can just go watch a snuff film if I want to do that. But point being, it was a video that was barred everywhere, that was impossible to find. I found a copy of it somewhere. There's always, you can find anything, and we're the average person. We're the average person using Google and YouTube searches and keywords. You know what I'm saying? We don't have the FBI at our disposal. Did I lose you, Dan? I think we did. Hopefully he calls back. I lost Dan Wismar there in the middle of that last talk. Anyways, when he comes back, we'll switch the conversation here and jump into talking about the Ohio State Buckeyes. Anyways, in the meantime, keep the conversation rolling. That was odd. It just I get a little tone that lets me know when the call got dropped. So while we're waiting for Dan Wismar, sorry about that, guys. Technical problems on our end. You can keep the conversation going on Facebook and Twitter and email, facebook.com/thesportsfix. Tweet with us at the SportsFix CLE. Email us, thesportsfix@AOL.com. And as we had kind of gotten sidetracked there on the topic before we got to talking about the Buckeyes and hitting the football, the NFL now facing even more pressure on them from the National Organization for Women, as they've come out and asked for the resignation of Roger Goodell here based on this. And the statement that we read earlier went on to talk about the example that the NFL sets for colleges and high schools and middle schools and even elementary schools. And there's a lot more to that as Dan joins us back in on the conversation. Are you with me, Dan?
I am with you. Sorry about that. I have no idea what happened there.
Oh, no problem. He went blank, and I'm like, hey, man, I mean, I was just making a point that you can find stuff if you go looking for it. You know what I mean? But,
yeah, that's true. It's out there.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say maybe just turn the issue to Gordon. I had a question for you. I wanted to make sure I got it in about Gordon. Yeah. Has there been any? Have you seen any reason to believe that a reinstatement of previously suspended players was part of the negotiating that went on between the players union and the NFL on the new drug policy? I mean, it seemed there was so much certainty, and I know you've said, hey, let's tap the brakes, and I totally agree in terms of getting ready to dust off Josh Gordon's locker and bring his uniform back out and get ready to have him put it on. But because I have seen nothing substantive that tells me that even if the drug policy is changed, that there's anything like a Gordon reinstatement in the cards, although people who are supposedly knowledgeable about that have said, hey, if you're smart, you might want to draft Josh Gordon to your fantasy team and things like this from national NFL reporters. So I got a feeling there must be something in the cards, but I've sure seen nothing that is close to evidence or anything authoritative that says that a Gordon reinstatement is part of the package that comes with this new agreement.
I mean, see, even that, it's hard to quantify because those things could change before the final. This is a union negotiation, and usually these aren't done in public, and not just in sports, but in anywhere. This is the hard work that's usually done for months by the union reps and the factory or the company or the organization or whatever it may be, and then after all that work is done, it's taken to the group of people to vote on it, and it would be the NFL players. But so I'm not sure, but that's what we were talking about earlier, is to me, if you're a Josh Gordon playing for the Browns guy, there's multiple hurdles to jump here. First and foremost is that the thing gets approved, period, because that's going to take some work here. Because like I said, there's a whole lot of players. None of them have a sign over their head that says I'm voting no, because it's secret. It's in the closet. Do you think if you went around and voted with the baseball players in 1996 and asked them if there should be steroid testing, do you think you would have gotten a majority? No. Every one of those players would have publicly said, we want drug testing, and behind the scenes they'd have been like, well, as long as I don't got to piss in the cup, because then they're going to find out all about the stuff that I'm doing. So that's what's going on now. But even if you get there, this is the other thing I'm explaining to people, Dan, is there are going to be some retroactive changes to suspensions, but that's the one that nobody's sure about is Josh Gordon. I keep saying he may be the one player who doesn't benefit from this, because he's the only one out of the group of players whose violation occurred after the start of the new league year, which is March 11th, or I believe it's March 11th. So it's like, we'll change the rules. We're going to change them in September, and we're going to make them retroactive to this league year. So that takes you back to March 11th. Josh Gordon failed his drug test in January or February, which no matter what means that he failed it last year. So there's a difference between what the NFL players want to do is take the players who got suspended, like Josh Gordon, like Wes Welker, like a lot of these guys. They want to take the ones that got suspended in March, April, May, June, because it does make sense that even though it took until August to change the rules, had we been able to change them in March, they would have been changed in March for the beginning of the year. That makes sense. But how can you say Josh Gordon should be reinstated too if it was a different set of rules that he was playing for? You can't grandfather everybody. And I think Josh Gordon is where the NFL is going to draw the line, because if they let him go a month before the league deadline, then you got to let the next guy go 6 weeks before the deadline. And what about the guy that got suspended in December of last year? And all of a sudden, you got to make exceptions for everybody. I think if you do go retroactive, you set the deadline at March 11th. If you failed before, you go under the old rules. If you failed after, you go under the new rules. That's got to be the way to do it. There's no other way.
Well, you're right, except for one thing, and that is the NFL is so image conscious and so optics conscious, and they've gotten so much flack about a year for Josh Gordon for smoking pot, regardless of all the circumstances. And we in Cleveland are much better attuned to what happened to Josh Gordon than people around the country are. And the NFL office is dealing with fan reaction, nationwide, not just people who are, who understand that, this is a collectively bargained thing and Gordon's thing has nothing to do with Ray Rice. So we're maybe a little bit more in tune with that. They are so image conscious that they may just feel that doing something on Josh Gordon to lessen that penalty makes them appear in a better light, and appearing in a better light is more important than following the letter of the law for them.
And you know what, though? Believe that. Step 2 of that is, you may be right. The other thing that I have heard is that if they make an exception for Josh Gordon, it wouldn't be he would come back next week. If you do decide to envelop Josh Gordon in, he would be resuspended under the new rules, which would be 8 games instead of a full season for his situation, which means he would be eligible to come back after week 8, after the 8th game. And
that may be a workable compromise for them. But yes, the bottom line is if they change them accordingly, what we know or what we think we know about the new policy is that the thresholds for a positive test will be changed, and if that happens, then he will not have tested positive according to the new rule. So you could look at it that way too. I guess the only thing that I've seen, Jerry, that lends credence to the idea that some Gordon deal is in the works is what I heard the other day about the rather conspicuous silence of Drew Rosenhaus about this whole thing. Ever since this happened, we know that Drew Rosenhaus is known for being a tough nut to crack and a guy who will fight for his people down to the last possible letter of the rule. Is that we've heard nothing from him, and the fact that we've heard nothing from him tells us something, and that is that maybe there is something that has been negotiated regarding Gordon and regarding this new policy, and that coupled with the fact that national reporters who presumably have connections that know something are not hesitating to come out and say, hey, Josh Gordon can be reinstated real soon. So maybe it'll be 8 weeks, maybe there'll be no reinstatement, but that's one thing that has